Hi, everybody. Tonight, I want to take you back in time, far back, to a world shrouded in fog, mystery, and silence. A world where the air was thick with incense and fear, where church bells tolled not just for prayer, but for the passing of another soul. A world where death wore a mask of blackened boils and came riding not on a horse, but on the back of a flea. We're going to journey through the years of the Black Death. But this isn't just a tale of sorrow. It's a question whispered through history. How could you have survived the most devastating pandemic in human memory? What choices would you have had? What tricks might have saved you, even when death was at your door? This story, told softly, as though beside a candle at the end of a long, dark corridor, will explore those answers, one step at a time. So lie back, let your breath slow. The wind is rising outside the stone walls of your medieval cottage, but you are safe here. Let me tell you a story. The year is 1347. It begins on a whisper, as all tragedies do. The sea carries ships, and ships carry men, and men carry death. The port of Messina in Sicily stirs before dawn, its fishermen squinting into a morning mist that clings like a shroud. They do not yet know what's aboard the 12 Genoese galleys drifting into the harbor. They only know that something is wrong. The sailors are pale, not seasick, but drained, ghostly. Their eyes flicker with fever, and some never rise from their straw cots at all. The living beg to be taken ashore, but many are already beyond help. A priest leans over a young man's body and recoils in horror. Swollen lumps, the size of apples, distend the man's armpits and groin. A stench hangs over the deck like rotting meat. The plague has arrived in Europe, but you are not in Sicily. You are in the countryside outside of Paris, a modest village surrounded by wheat fields and forest. Your home is humble, a single room of wattle and daub, the thatch above your head patched and uneven. A small hearth sits at the center, and your world is small, perhaps no larger than a few miles in any direction. You know your neighbors. You share your bread. You listen to the priest on Sundays. You have heard stories, wild stories. Ships sinking with no crew, towns emptying overnight, whole families dying before the fire burns out in their hearth. But such things are distant, the stuff of travelers' tales. You shrug and return to your chores, and yet, death is coming. To survive what is coming, you must listen. To the land, to the whispers of healers, to the movements of the wind and the warnings of ravens. Your survival will depend on what you know, what you are willing to believe, and when you are willing to act. Let's begin with the body. First, know this. The Black Death is not a single illness, but three in one. Bubonic, septicemic, pneumonic, each more terrible than the last. The bubonic variety begins innocently enough. A headache, chills. Then comes the swelling, the buboes, from which it takes its name. Large, dark lumps in the groin or armpits, tender and burning. You will burn with fever, your joints will ache, your body will rebel. If you are lucky and you act fast, you may have a chance. A sliver. Some say survival is 1 in 5. Others say it's closer to 1 in 10. But what can you do? The physicians of the day with their long-nosed masks and sweet herbs are both wise and foolish. They believe the plague rides on poisoned air, miasma. So they burn incense, fill their masks with rose petals, and purify the air with smoke. While incorrect in theory, their practice has merit. Smoke may drive away fleas and herbs might repel rats. You don't know why it helps, but it does. To survive, you must embrace paradox. What is wrong in reason might be right in instinct. Flee fast. That is the first rule of plague survival. The Italian writer Boccaccio said it best. Go quickly, go far, and stay long. Leave the towns, go to the high hills, where air is clean and men are few. Take your family and vanish into the forest. The plague follows people. Rats follow grain. Distance is your shield. But it is not easy to flee. You are poor. Your crops need tending. Your animals cannot travel. Your wife is pregnant. Your old father cannot walk far. And the roads, oh, the roads are dangerous. Vagabonds, thieves, and worse. Many take to the highways to escape death, and in doing so carry death with them. So you must decide. Do you stay and prepare, or run and risk? Suppose you stay. You begin by sealing your home, plugging holes, hanging herbs, wormwood, lavender, mint from the rafters. You spread rushes on the floor, sprinkled with vinegar and camphor. You clean, more than ever before. You wash your hands with wine. You keep your children inside. You burn juniper and pine needles. You slaughter the rats you find in the grain. You let no stranger cross your threshold. Each day you watch the road. Each dusk you count the smoke from neighboring chimneys. Are they fewer now? You mark the silence. No church bells today. A bad sign. A terrible sign. Then one morning, you hear it. A wagon creaking down the lane. The bell ringing. A man shouting, "Bring out your dead!" Your hands tremble. You are not sick. Not yet. But it is close. You can feel it in your bones. Now more than ever, your survival depends on knowledge, on discipline, on luck. You hear that some survive by lancing the buboes, draining the poison, but the risk is great. If the knife is not clean, death comes faster. Others drink potions, vinegar mixed with herbs, or the blood of doves. Some smear themselves with mercury, others with feces. You do none of these. You trust in cleanliness. In isolation, you let no one in. You whisper prayers in the night. The days pass, the fever passes you by. You do not know why, but you are still here. The plague has reached your village, and yet you have not succumbed. But the story is far from over. Let's continue in the next chapter. The silence after death is not like any other silence. It is thick. It seeps into the thatch of your roof and the cracks in your floor. The birds stop singing. The dogs stop barking. Even the wind seems to tiptoe through the trees as though afraid to disturb the hush. And you, still alive, are caught between breaths, unsure if you're grateful or afraid that tomorrow might be your turn. Days have passed since the cart came. The man who drove it didn't stop. He didn't knock. He knew better. Instead, he tossed lime over the bodies he collected and muttered prayers without conviction. You watched him from behind your shutter, your heart pounding like a blacksmith's hammer. But your family is still whole, still breathing. You haven't seen your neighbors smoke in 3 days now. There is an urge in you to check, to knock on their door, to offer help or seek news. But you resist, because you remember, the sickness leaps like fire across compassion. One step, one touch, one breath, and the chain begins. And so you stay behind your door. You remember the stories your grandmother used to tell, of witches who cursed whole villages, of spirits that clung to sorrow like ivy to stone, of the angel of death, robed in shadow, choosing homes not by sin, but by silence. You wonder if perhaps this is punishment, for pride, for greed, for the wars that kings wage while peasants starve. The priest used to preach of hellfire, of divine judgment, but he hasn't been seen in days. The church bells are quiet now. Even the steeple is a skeleton in the mist. Still, you live, and that fact alone begins to change you. Your thoughts grow sharper. Your hands, once clumsy with fear, move with purpose. You boil your water longer. You air out your bedding in the sun. You carve garlic into your bread and hang sprigs of thyme over the doors. Small things, perhaps, but they are something. Your wife, pale but unshaken, takes to grinding dried herbs in a bowl of stone. Angelica, rue, yarrow. She mixes them with vinegar and stores the potion in little clay jugs. You don't ask where she learned it. Wives know things husbands don't. Your children, too, have changed. They no longer ask to play outside. They no longer run to the gate when a wagon creaks past. They speak in whispers. They wait for permission before touching anything. But they smile when you light the hearth, and their eyes shine when you tell them stories in the candlelight. That, too, is survival. Some nights you cannot sleep. You sit by the embers and listen to the owls, to the rustle of leaves, to the far-off howls that may be wolves or something worse. One night you hear footsteps on the road, soft, uneven. You rise slowly, take the small blade you keep hidden beneath the table. Your wife sits up, alert. The children stir. There is a knock, not loud, hesitant. A voice, female, weak. Please. You freeze. She says her name is Isabeau. She was from the next village. Her father died. Her brothers fled. Her mother, her voice breaks. She does not finish. She has walked for 2 days. No food, no water. You glance at your wife. No words pass, just a look, a choice. It is the most dangerous moment of your life. You open the door just enough to see her. A girl, perhaps 17, thin, pale, a smear of dirt on her cheek, her eyes swollen from tears. She leans on a walking stick, her clothes tattered. She holds out her hands empty. You give her water, a bit of bread. You set it outside the door and tell her to wait by the tree near the well. You watch her eat. She does not look sick, not yet. But you know well now, looks can lie. So you build a shelter, not much, just a lean-to of branches, thatch, and canvas. Far enough from your house, but near enough to watch. You bring her food each day, speak from a distance. You ask about her village, what she saw, how many were lost. She says they buried people in their gardens, that no one dared toll the bell anymore, that her brother tried to burn the sickness out of their home with sulfur and fire. It didn't work. But she smiles when she speaks of a red ribbon her mother tied in her hair, how she dreams of finding it again, still tucked beneath her pillow. You begin to care for her, slowly, carefully. You teach her to wash with ash soap, to boil everything she eats. You show her which herbs to chew if her throat feels tight, and how to crush juniper into salves for the skin. Isabeau listens. She learns quickly. One morning she brings you a small sack of apples, found beneath an old tree by the stream. She offers them with both hands, her face tilted up like a prayer. You hesitate, then take them, boil them, share them, and you live another day. It is a strange kind of trust that grows between you. Quiet, cautious, built not on promises but on shared rules. She never steps closer than the fence. You never touch the food she brings until it's been washed and cooked. You speak across distances, and in that space, a bond forms. One evening, as the sun burns red behind the trees, you realize something. Isabeau is smiling again. So are your children. And for the first time in weeks, your wife hums as she works. There is life here still. Not much, not loud, but enough. And as the moon rises over the hills, pale and perfect, you allow yourself, for one night, to believe that survival is not just the absence of death. It is the presence of hope. It is a shelter built for a stranger, a loaf shared, a song remembered. And so you sleep, not because the danger has passed, but because you now know what to do when it arrives. Tomorrow, the road will bring something new, and you will be ready. The morning breaks softer than usual. A thin mist clings to the fields, gently veiling the land in silver. Dew beads along the grass, each drop like a miniature world reflecting the uncertain sky above. You rise before the sun crests the hills, careful not to wake the children. The fire has burned low and the coals glow like forgotten stars in the ashes. Outside, the world feels still, as if holding its breath. You step out and stretch, your joints stiff, your eyes searching the horizon for anything unusual, anything out of place. But there is only the rustling of the trees and the distant murmur of the river beyond the far meadow. Isabeau is already awake. She sits cross-legged on a fallen log near her shelter, her hands moving methodically as she peels a handful of wild onions she must have foraged at dawn. Her face is thin but stronger now. Her hair, though uncombed, shines where the light catches it. When she sees you, she raises her hand in greeting, silent, familiar. A routine, a rhythm. It has begun to form. In this strange season where death stalks unseen and silence reigns, you find comfort in small patterns. Each day is structured not by clock or calendar, but by instinct and necessity. You tend to the goat. You dig in the garden. You boil water, always water. And when the light begins to fade, you light the fire, always with care, always with reverence. It is strange how quickly one learns to live like this. You remember dimly the old life, the laughter in the village square, the warmth of the tavern on cold nights, the crowded market with its smells of fish, cheese, and hay. But those memories are beginning to soften at the edges, like parchment left too long in the sun. One night you dream of bells, not funeral bells, but joyful ones, wedding bells, laughter, music, and when you wake, you are crying and do not know why. The next day, something changes. A sound, a real sound, comes down the road from the west. Not footsteps, not a cart, a voice, singing. At first it seems impossible. No one sings now. Singing is for festivals and weddings, for celebrations and spring dances. But this song is low, wordless, a hum carried on the breeze like a secret. You step to the edge of the field and wait. A figure appears over the rise. It is a man, alone. His robes are long, the color of dust and old rain. Around his neck hangs a wooden cross. In his hand, he carries a long staff tipped with iron. He walks with the measured pace of one who has walked far, perhaps too far. He sees you and stops. You do not speak. You merely lift your hand, a quiet greeting, a question. He nods and continues forward, but slowly, as if not wishing to startle. When he is close enough to see clearly, you notice the red sash tied at his waist, the mark of a wandering monk, a brother of the road, the kind that travels from town to town, offering last rites or prayers or messages from afar. You do not invite him inside, but you do not turn him away. He sits near your fence. You hand him a bowl of soup, set carefully on a flat rock. He bows his head in thanks and eats slowly, savoring every bite. When he finishes, he drinks water from a gourd and wipes his mouth with his sleeve. Only then does he speak. His voice is quiet, hoarse from days without use. He tells you his name is Brother Tomas. He comes from the south, from a monastery in the hills near Lyon. It is gone now, burned, not by fire, but by abandonment. The monks either fled or perished. He does not know which. He alone stayed behind to care for the sick who came to their doors, until he could not stay any longer. Now he walks. Not to escape, he says, but to witness. His eyes are kind but tired. He looks at your children playing near the hearth and smiles. You have done well, he says. You nod, unsure what to say. He does not ask to stay. Instead, he sleeps beneath the stars, near the old willow. Isabeau leaves a blanket beside him in the night. He does not speak of it in the morning, but his smile lingers longer. Brother Tomas stays 3 days. In that time, he tells you things, of towns where the dead are stacked like firewood, of men who believe that whipping themselves will drive away God's wrath, of cities where the gates have been barred, not to keep danger out, but to keep death in. But he also speaks of hope, of nuns who cared for the sick until the very end, of farmers who opened their barns to strangers, of kindness passed in silence. He tells you something else too, that there are rumors, whispers really, of pockets of land, isolated valleys untouched by plague, places where the wind blows just right, or the waters run pure, places where life goes on as it once did, hidden in the folds of the mountains. You find yourself wondering, could such a place exist? Would you dare seek it? On the morning of the 4th day, Brother Tomas rises before dawn. He leaves a bundle of herbs on your doorstep, sage, thyme, and a sprig of rosemary bound with twine. For strength, his note says. And then he is gone. You watch him disappear down the road, his staff clicking against the stones. Isabeau says nothing, but her eyes linger on the path long after he vanishes. That day, you speak with your wife. You speak of choices, of staying, of leaving, of seeking the valleys Tomas spoke of. There is no certainty, no promise, only the knowledge that to remain here may one day become a kind of waiting. That night, as the stars wheel overhead, you make a decision. Tomorrow, you will prepare, not to flee in fear, but to journey in hope, because perhaps survival is not just enduring the storm. Perhaps, sometimes, it is walking through the dark toward the faintest glimmer of dawn. The morning comes not with thunder, nor with the tolling of bells, but with quiet determination. Your breath fogs the air as you step outside. The earth is damp with dew, and a robin calls somewhere beyond the hedgerow. You hold a satchel in one hand, worn mended, patched over and over, and in your heart, something heavy and trembling begins to take shape. You are going to leave. Not just for firewood, not just to check the nearby stream, but to truly leave. Beyond the familiar, beyond the fields you've tilled, the trees you've watched blossom and fade year after year. Beyond the graves of neighbors and kin. You are heading for the hills, for the unknown valleys spoken of by Brother Tomas. Valleys where, if God is willing, the plague has not yet set foot. Your wife packs slowly, her fingers lingering on every item. A wool shawl, a bit of bread, wrapped in cloth, a pouch of dried beans. She pauses over a wooden carving your youngest son made, a crude but earnest rabbit. Without a word, she tucks it into the bundle. The children do not cry. They are quiet, clinging to one another, sensing that this is not an ordinary journey. Isabeau says she will come. I've no one else, she says softly, brushing hair from her face. And if I stay here alone, I might not last the winter. You nod. There is no farewell ceremony, no procession, just the squeak of a cart's wheel and the low groan of leather straps being tightened. You load what little you can carry. Chickens are left behind. The goat you tether to the back of the cart, she'll walk with you at her own stubborn pace. You glance one last time at your home, the garden you dug by hand, the oak tree where your daughter once strung ribbons in spring, the stones you painted white to mark the boundary of your land. You leave the door open, a silent offering to whoever comes next. The road west is not a road in the true sense. It's a trail, a thinning ribbon of dirt winding through hedgerows and over hills. The plague has made travelers scarce, and so the land is still. You pass cottages overgrown with ivy, their windows blackened, their doors hanging loose. Fields lie unharvested, wheat stalks bow, heavy with seed, never gathered. On the third day, you find a milestone, half buried in moss. The lettering is worn, but you can make out a word. Cloys. A village, perhaps, or what remains of one. Your wife suggests taking the path around, a wide arc through the forest. You agree without hesitation. There is no need to see another place of death. You have seen enough. The children are tired. The youngest begins to lag, dragging his feet through the dust. You take turns lifting him onto the cart when the road smooths. Isabeau hums as she walks, not a song of joy, but a rhythm to keep time, to keep going. By the fifth day, your feet are blistered and raw. You rest near a stream, letting the goat drink while your wife boils water for tea. Isabeau gathers nettles from the banks, knowing they can soothe joints and give strength. You are changing. The journey is changing you. Once, you might have feared every rustle in the woods, every branch that snapped beneath a stranger's step. Now, you walk with the calm of those who have already lost much and fear little more. That night, a storm brews. You find shelter beneath an old hunting lodge, long abandoned, its roof half caved in. There, by the fire's low glow, you read aloud from a page torn from a psalter you found weeks ago. The words are faded, but they speak of mercy, of valleys green and shadows passed through, not perished in. You sleep with your children curled beside you, your wife's hand resting on your chest. Isabeau sleeps near the door, her knife beneath her cloak. When dawn returns, the sky is blue, bluer than it has been in weeks. Birdsong returns, so many voices weaving into a soft, chaotic melody that seems to say, life still. Later that day, you reach the edge of the old woods. There, carved into a tree, are symbols you recognize from childhood tales. Warding signs, circles crossed with arrows, lines of charcoal embedded into the bark, marks made by those who feared disease, warning others to stay away. You hesitate, but the trail goes through. You have no choice. The woods are different, thick with shadow, thick with memory, trees close in, and light filters only in threads. The children cling to the cart now. Isabeau walks closer, her eyes flicking constantly to either side. You hear things, not voices, but not silence either. The wind speaks differently here, as if it carries the last sighs of those who once passed through. In the center of the woods you find a chapel, tiny, stone, half swallowed by brambles. There are bones piled near the steps, clean bones, arranged in neat rows as though placed with reverence. A sign, a warning? You do not go inside. Instead, you leave an offering, a small loaf of bread and a lock of your daughter's hair tied in ribbon. You whisper a prayer and move on. The trees begin to thin. The light changes. By late afternoon, you reach the crest of a low ridge. And there, below, you see it. A valley, green, untouched. Smoke curls gently from a chimney. A mill wheel turns lazily in a stream. Children's voices, laughter drift faintly on the breeze. Your wife gasps. Isabeau clutches her chest. Your son asks, "Is this heaven?" You do not speak. You just take your wife's hand and begin the descent, step by step, toward a place where the world perhaps has not yet ended. The path down into the valley is steep, softened only by tufts of grass and roots that offer occasional footing. The cart creaks as it rolls slowly behind you, the goat tugging nervously at her rope, ears flicking at every chirp and rustle. The children move cautiously, as if afraid to disturb the delicate peace stretching before them. Below, the valley shimmers in late afternoon light, golden and hushed, as though held in a breath. The stream glints like silver thread winding through the meadows, and the thatched roofs of cottages peek out from behind clusters of orchard trees. The hills cradle this hidden place so completely, so gently, it feels as though it had been forgotten by time. And perhaps you think, that is why it still lives. By the time your boots touch the lower trail, the shadows have begun to stretch. You pause at a wooden gate set into a low stone wall. It stands ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. No signs bar your entry, no curses carved in wood, only a small carving above the gatepost, two hands cupped around a flame. You step through. The path winds between fields, rows of cabbage, beans, and barley, healthy, untouched, no blackened stalks, no shriveled leaves. A scarecrow leans over one field, its tunic flapping lazily, a bundle of dried lavender tied to each sleeve. Someone is tending these lands. You pass a small shrine nestled beneath a hawthorn tree, its candles long burned down to stubs. Fresh flowers sit in a bowl of river stones, wild violets and dog roses, a sign of care, reverence. And then you see them, three figures standing by a well, Two women and a man, all dressed in simple linens, their hands stained with earth and work. The man carries a spade, the older woman a basket of herbs, and the younger, barely more than a girl, has a length of rope coiled over one shoulder. They stop when they see you. There is no fear in their faces, only wariness and the quiet stillness of those who have seen more than they wish to and have learned to measure strangers not by appearance but by presence. You raise your hand. They say nothing at first. Then the man speaks. Where do you come from? His voice is low, careful. You speak your truth. Of the road, the forest, the weeks of survival. You do not lie, but you do not linger on the worst. There is no need to name every grave you passed, every scream you heard beneath the wind. He listens. The older woman steps forward. Her eyes are sharp, pale gray, like worn stone. Any sick among you? You shake your head. So does your wife. Isabeau speaks next, calm and sure. We've boiled everything. We've kept apart from the dying. None have coughed, none have burned with fever, not for weeks. The woman studies each of you in turn, her gaze resting on the children. Then she nods. You'll sleep outside the barn tonight, she says. Separate, to be sure. But if the dawn comes and you are still well, you may enter the village. It is more than fair. It is mercy. The man shows you the way. A short walk past a grove of walnut trees. The barn is old but sturdy, its beams weathered and its floor layered in sweet-smelling hay. A bucket of fresh water sits at the door, bread too, and a wedge of hard cheese wrapped in cloth. You whisper thanks. That night, the stars return. Clear and countless, strung like lanterns across the sky. You lie on your back, listening to your children's slow, even breathing. Isabeau sleeps near the entrance, her cloak wrapped tight, a small smile on her lips. You do not sleep quickly. You watch the rafters above, trace the beams with your eyes, and you wonder, what did these people do differently? What choices, what luck, what grace led this place to remain untouched? At dawn, you are still breathing, all of you. When the sun slips over the hills, warm and soft, the younger woman returns. Her name is Marin, and she brings warm milk and dried apples. She watches as your children eat, then gestures for you to follow. You're welcome now, she says, but you'll follow our ways if you wish to stay. You nod. She leads you through the village. There are perhaps 20 houses, scattered like stones across the valley's bowl. A blacksmith's forge, quiet but clean. A watermill turning lazily. A gathering hall with wide steps and windows thrown open to the breeze. No church, but a grove ringed with carved stones, old ones, older than memory. Marin explains as you walk. They closed their borders early, long before the panic. A traveler came once, sick. He died in the forest and they burned his cart. After that, they trusted no news, no visitors. Their healer taught them herbs to strengthen the blood, taught them how to cleanse the air with sage and pine. They buried their dead quickly, deep and alone. But more than that, they lived with discipline. One person fetched water, another foraged. No one entered another's house uninvited. No one touched unnecessarily. They sang from windows, shared food from baskets lowered on ropes, and they watched the signs, the color of skin, the sound of a cough, the slow change in a neighbor's gaze. It was vigilance, not miracles, that kept them alive. And now you are here, accepted but not yet trusted. You understand. You build a small shelter near the orchard, wood and thatch, rough but dry. The villagers bring you tools, rope, seed, a quiet welcome. You begin to work, to grow, to give back. Your wife teaches the children how to dry herbs in bundles. Isabeau helps in the kitchens, careful and quiet. You trade your knowledge of forest traps for a bowl of honey and a strip of cloth dyed with elderberry. Time slows. The world narrows to the curve of the hills, the murmur of the stream, the laughter of your children playing with village pups near the blackberry thicket. You have found a place where life continues, where silence means peace, not fear, where fire is for warmth, not pyres. But even here, you do not forget. You cannot. Because the world beyond the hills still burns, and somewhere perhaps someone else walks the road now, as you once did. Searching, hoping, still breathing. The season turns quietly. You do not notice it at first, not in the blaze of color or a sudden chill, but in the way the birds sing longer in the mornings, and how the sun now hangs lower in the sky before slipping behind the hills. The orchard begins to soften with ripening pears, and the bees move slower, heavy with nectar. Your shelter, once hastily built, has become something more permanent. You've added walls of woven willow and daub, reinforced the roof with bundled thatch. A small window carved from an old shutter lets in the morning light. Your wife has placed wildflowers in a cracked clay jug on the sill. Isabeau carved a stool from driftwood found near the stream. You are no longer strangers here, but you are still not quite part of them, and perhaps you understand now you never truly will be, or should be. Marin speaks with you often. She brings herbs in the morning and sometimes sits while your wife prepares them into tinctures. She watches your children play with hers, their boundaries softening in laughter, if not yet in trust. She tells you about the old days of the valley before the sickness came, of midsummer dances and lanterns hung from every tree, of songs carried up the hills like prayers. No such songs now. The village lives, but it does not celebrate, not yet. On the 10th night after your arrival, a bell is rung, not loud, not frantic, a slow, deliberate toll. Once, then again. You step outside into the dusk. The sky is fading, the last of the day casting long shadows across the path. You find Marin already walking toward the grove. Others are gathering too, in pairs and small clusters. Each carries something, a small branch of lavender, a candle, a bundle of rosemary tied with red twine. Your wife takes your hand, and your children follow silently. Even Isabeau has put on her best cloak, the one embroidered with the faded sigil of her village. In the grove, the villagers form a wide circle around the standing stones. Each stone is weathered and rough, worn by centuries of wind and rain. They rise like fingers from the earth, holding nothing and everything in their stillness. At the center stands the old woman, Thane, the village healer. She does not speak loudly, but every word she says cuts through the hush like a thread of smoke. This is not a time for mourning, she says. We've done enough of that. This is not a time for forgetting, she continues, for forgetting is how the dead are lost a second time. No names are spoken aloud, but each face holds a story, a brother, a friend, a lover, a daughter. You close your eyes and picture the faces of those you left behind. Old Thomas, the carpenter with the crooked smile. Yvette, who sold butter and sang hymns even in the rain. Even those whose names you never knew, only that they once were and now are not. A single note begins to rise. A hum, low without melody at first, but it spreads across the circle from mouth to mouth like warmth. A song that has no words, only the shared breath of those who remain. Your children hum too, their eyes wide, watching the flickering of candles lit and held high. Then lays her hand on one of the stones and whispers something no one else hears. Then the circle begins to move, slowly, clockwise, like the passing of time. Each person steps forward in turn, placing their offering at the foot of a stone, herbs, feathers, bits of linen, carved beads. You step forward when it is your time and lay down a ribbon from your wife's hair, once bright, now sun-faded, but cherished. When the last candle has burned to its base, the circle dissolves, but the silence remains deep and still, like the earth catching its breath. Later, you ask Marin what the ceremony is called. She shrugs. We don't name it, she says. It's just what we do. In the days that follow, something in the village shifts, not in great ways, not in the sudden chorus of song or laughter echoing off the hills, but in the gentle gestures of daily life. A loaf left on your doorstep, a carved comb for your daughter's hair, a bowl of warm broth when your wife coughs once softly and is then fine. You begin to help with the water wheel. You trade tools with the smith. You teach the children how to mark stars for navigation should they ever find themselves lost. Still, even in peace, the question returns to you. Why had this valley been spared? The villagers speak of fortune, of foresight, of sacred ground, but you begin to wonder if it is something else. Not a gift, but a burden. A place held together by choice, by discipline, by sacrifice, by the understanding that life must be guarded, even from kindness. One evening, Isabeau stands at the edge of the orchard, looking back toward the hills. You step beside her. Thinking of leaving? You ask. She doesn't answer right away. No, she says finally. Just, you understand. Memory is a path that must be walked, no matter how many times it leads to sorrow. Before bed, your son asks if the plague is over. You pause. Then shake your head. No, you say, but we are safe today. He nods, satisfied. Children live in today. You lie awake longer than usual that night, listening to the wind in the trees. And somewhere deep inside you wonder, how long can safety hold? How long can any sanctuary last when the world beyond still groans with hunger and fire? But then your wife turns in her sleep, her hand brushing yours, and the children shift, tangled together in dreams. And you decide it does not matter, because for now you have given them a morning to wake into, a tomorrow that still holds light. And that, in this world, is enough. Autumn arrives like a sigh through the valley. It does not roar. It does not demand. It creeps gently into the world, dressing the trees in quiet gold and rust, brushing the mornings with chill and sharpening the scent of the earth. The stream runs slower now, and the last of the swallows lift into the sky, heading south with the certainty of creatures who follow instinct more than thought. You wake to frost on the edges of the roof, thin and laced like spider silk. The children rush to see it each morning, their laughter trailing little clouds into the crisp air. They trace shapes on the window glass with their fingers, rabbits, suns, the outlines of hills. You watch them with a heart both full and tight, knowing that joy in such a time is as rare and fragile as a butterfly in winter. The harvest begins in earnest. Every able hand in the village joins in. Apples are gathered in great wooden baskets, pumpkins rolled from the fields with grunts and cheers. Herbs are hung from rafters in fat bundles, sage, thyme, marjoram, all to be dried and stored for the months ahead. You are assigned to the grain. With two others, you cut the stalks carefully, laying them in bundles to dry before threshing. The work is slow, repetitive, and oddly comforting. With every swing of the scythe, you feel the rhythm of life, the persistence of it, pushing forward through even the darkest season. Then the healer takes a special interest in your wife. She invites her to her cottage, a round, squat place half covered in ivy and crowned with a chimney that never stops breathing smoke. Inside, the air is thick with the scent of drying roots and something else you cannot name, sweet, musky, ancient. Your wife returns each evening with red-stained fingers and new stories. She learns to bind poultices, to mix powders that soothe the chest, to read the tongue and the pulse like a map of the body. Then does not speak much, but you see the way she watches your wife, measuring her, perhaps molding her into someone who might one day replace her. You're proud and a little afraid. To be needed in this world is to be burdened by it too. One morning, Isabeau brings news. She had gone early to the ridge, as she sometimes does, to gather mushrooms and catch the sun rising beyond the trees. When she returned, her face was pale, her voice careful. "There's smoke," she said, "beyond the hills, not from our valley. You all climb the narrow path after midday, careful of the wet leaves, and there it is, thin trails of gray rising beyond the eastern trees, distant but deliberate. Not wildfire, hearts, campfires, people. The news spreads through the village not in panic but in stillness. No one cries out, no one runs, but the rhythm of life pauses. You can feel it. At the gathering hall, the villagers meet in low murmurs. No shouting, no fear writ large, just questions pressed soft as snow into the hush. Who are they? Where did they come from? What if they are sick? What if they're not? Dan speaks at last. Her voice is as steady as the stone she stands among. "We prepare. We do not decide yet. The road must be watched. The signs must be read." So they do what they have always done. They build a fire at the western edge of the valley, the border fire. If the strangers come, they will see it first. They will know that this land is not empty, that those who live here do not wait in ignorance. A bowl is placed beside it, filled with ash and rosemary, a message, a ward. You volunteer to stand the watch that night. Marin gives you a long cloak lined with wool, and your wife places her hand against your cheek, holding your gaze without words. Isabeau offers to come too, and you accept. Together, you walk to the edge of the valley and sit beneath the great alder tree, the fire dancing low beside you. Hours pass. The stars come out. You speak little. Once you hear something, branches breaking far away, but no one comes. And slowly, the night folds around you. At dawn, nothing has changed, but the fear has settled deeper in the bones of the village. Later that day, children are kept indoors. Doors are barred gently, not harshly. Meals are shared, but the laughter is softer. There's an understanding now. The outside world, long held at bay, has stirred again. You speak to Marin as she sharpens a blade. "Do you think they'll come?" She doesn't stop her work. "I think they're already on the move," she says. No one stays still anymore. Hunger makes ghosts of people. Desperation makes them loud. You ask if the village will turn them away. She pauses then and answers slowly. If they are sick, we will not let them in. If they are not, we must listen. You nod. But a part of you wonders, who decides? Who speaks for the silent when the price of mercy could be death? That night, your wife asks you what will happen if the strangers come with open hands and you don't know the answer. You only know that something old has returned to the edge of your peace. A flicker of the world before. Not the sickness, but the choice. The awful human choice to share or to protect, to risk or to refuse. And you wonder, not for the first time, how many villages like yours made the same decision before the plague came knocking? How many bartered their safety for a bowl of soup in a stranger's story? You fall asleep with that question heavy in your chest. Outside, the wind rises, and far beyond the valley, smoke continues to climb. The wind carries stories now. It slinks through the trees and across the valley floor, curling around chimney stacks, slipping beneath shutters. It brings with it the faint scent of wood smoke, not your own, not familiar, and the rustling unease of a world still turning, still wounded. Each morning, someone climbs the ridge to watch. They bring spyglasses, or sharpened eyes if nothing more, scanning the tree lines and hilltops. The smoke remains in the east, rising steadily. No sign of tents or movement. Just that persistent gray line stretching into the sky like a whisper from another world. You take your turn, too. From up high, the valley looks like a painting forgotten by time. The stream winds like silver thread through the green and amber quilt of fields. The cottages huddle in quiet clusters, their thatched roofs furred with early frost. Peaceful, fragile. An illusion, perhaps, but one worth guarding. Marin brings news to the fire one night. She and her brother followed the path eastward, keeping to the shadows. What they found was a camp, 10, maybe 12 people, families, a few children, thin, dirty, quiet. They're not plague-touched, she says. Not yet. The villagers listen in silence. Then Denny speaks. We give them the test. No one questions. You learn what the test is the next day. A bundle is prepared. Bread, dried apples, salt, garter steeped with yarrow. A basket lined with fresh linen left near the ash bowl at the edge of the valley. A signal. If the strangers take the bundle, they accept the rules. If they take the linen, they understand the deeper meaning. Cleanliness. Caution. Respect for boundaries. You volunteer to deliver it. So does Isabel. Together, you walk before the dawn, the mist curling at your ankles. The sky glows faintly violet behind the hills. The basket is heavy, not in weight, but in significance. You place it carefully on the stone beside the fire. You do not wait. You retreat back behind the alder grove, hidden from view, and crouch silently beneath the branches. You wait for hours. The sun climbs higher, the frost melts to dew. Birds flutter and call above you, then a flicker. A boy, perhaps 10, maybe younger. He approaches the basket with slow steps, looking left then right. His hair is matted, his boots worn through at the toes. He doesn't run. He kneels, gently lifts the cloth, inspects the bread, the water. Then he takes one item, not food, not water, but the garlic. He places it against his chest as if it were a talisman. Then he lifts the cloth, not to keep, but to breathe its scent. Then he places it back, all of it, even the garlic, and turns and walks away. You feel something tighten in your chest, not fear, not pity, something heavier, something shaped like guilt. Later you tell Thinny what you saw. She listens, her old hands pressed together, fingertips touching. Then she nods once slowly. They understand, she says. That is enough. But is it? The next morning there are marks beside the fire, not footprints, not obvious ones, but the ash has been rearranged. 3 pine cones laid in a perfect triangle, a sprig of rosemary pressed between them, a message, a symbol, then reads it like a page. They're asking to speak, but not in voice, not in presence, through offering. So the exchange begins. Each day you leave something, a handful of barley, a shard of soap, a twist of salt. Each day something returns, dried mushrooms, a strip of leather, once even a clean, hand-sewn button. They are not asking for much. They are not begging. They are trying to live. The village begins to speak in murmurs. Not all are pleased. Some say a gate is only as strong as its weakest latch. That kindness is a thread that once pulled can unravel the whole. But others remember. Remember being cold. Remember being hungry. Remember knocking on doors that did not open. You remember. Your wife places a candle in the window that night. Isabel weaves a small token from straw and red thread, something her mother taught her long ago, and sets it near the orchard fence. The strangers do not come closer, but the offerings continue. One day you find a bundle wrapped in faded linen. Inside, a child's drawing, crude but clear. A figure by a fire, a valley, a house with smoke curling from the chimney, a tree, and in the tree, a red ribbon tied to a branch. Hope, drawn by a child's hand. You show it to the children. They do not ask questions, they only look at it for a long time. That night, your youngest asks if the people outside the valley have dreams too. Yes, you say. Of course they do. Do they have stories? They have many. Can we hear them? You pause and realize that is the question, isn't it? What if the stories we fear are the ones we haven't heard yet? What if the voices beyond the hills are not a threat, but a mirror? You go to sleep thinking of that. And in your dream, the fire burns steady at the edge of the valley. Two figures sit across from each other, not speaking, but sharing the warmth. The wind shifts again, subtle at first, but you feel it in your bones. A whisper, not of danger, but of movement, of change. Leaves fall faster now, clinging less stubbornly to the branches. The air smells of loam and quiet decay, the way the earth always does before sleep. Winter is coming. The villagers begin to seal their homes. Window cracks are stuffed with wool. Doors are reinforced. Food is packed into clay jars and cellars. The days grow shorter, shadows longer. Fires are lit earlier. Even the children, so recently wild in the fields, now play closer to home, building forts of wood and wool beneath tables, pretending to be kings and queens hiding from a storm. You work harder than ever. Each day begins before dawn, splitting logs, hauling water, checking the goats' hooves for signs of rot. You help mend the thatch on a neighbor's roof, your hands calloused, your breath misting the cold air. You don't speak much anymore while you work. There is too much to do, and too much on your mind. The offerings at the edge of the valley continue, more careful now, wrapped against the frost. You leave dried fruit and beeswax. They return pine needles, polished stones, dried strips of meat cured with juniper. There's precision in it, like a ritual, a dance between unseen partners who trust only enough to keep dancing. Then one morning, a change. You climb the ridge, as you often do, and find something new beside the fire. A bundle of birch bark tied with sinew. Inside a letter. The handwriting is rough, words uneven but readable. It begins simply, "We are not sick." You read it aloud that evening in the gathering hall. The villagers sit in silence, the firelight playing over their faces. Some lean forward, others cross their arms. The children are kept close. Then closes her eyes as you read. "We came from the north. We fled the fever. We buried our kin. We burned what we could. We lost our names almost, but not ourselves. We are not sick. We know what sickness is. We have watched it take everything. We have kept to the old ways. We only ask to survive, not to take, not to harm, but to be." There is more. A list of names, first names only, written carefully. 2 families, a widower, a woman with child. The last line is different. "We will stay outside if we must, but let our children know there's still kindness in the world." The silence that follows is long and heavy. When it breaks, it is with voices not raised in fear, but in argument. Marin speaks first. She is firm. "We survived because we kept to our rules. If we bend them now, what was it for?" Others agree. But then old Johann stands. His beard is white, his back bent like a bow. "I remember," he says, "the day a traveler gave my son a blanket when he was cold. That blanket saved him. If we are warm now, must we forget what cold was?" Then your wife stands. She does not speak loudly, but her voice reaches every corner of the hall. "We survived because someone somewhere once let us live." The vote is not unanimous, but it is clear. The strangers will not be brought into the village. Not yet. But a new shelter will be built, just outside the trees. A place with warmth, with food, with dignity. A space to wait, to heal, to prove. You are chosen to build it. You and 5 others. Over the next 5 days, you raise the shelter with quiet hands and steady purpose. A timber frame. Walls packed with moss and mud for insulation. A small stove made from old stones. Then donates a bundle of dried herbs to hang from the rafters. Isabeau leaves a needle and thread folded in cloth. When it's finished, you leave the door open. You step back into the trees and wait. That night, they come. You do not see it directly, only the shadows passing through the firelight. A small figure first, then a taller one. A woman, a bundle carried carefully in her arms, then two more, all silent. By dawn, the fire inside the shelter is lit. No one crosses the line, but no one flees either. Days pass, the shelter lives. Each morning, smoke curls from its chimney. You leave food nearby, and it vanishes by noon. Once, you find drawings tacked to a tree, birds, a sun rising over hills. The villagers do not speak often of the newcomers, but they no longer whisper when they do. The children become curious. Your youngest asks if the strangers have toys. You shrug and say maybe. That night, she leaves her wooden bird by the shelter path. The next day, it's gone. In its place, a smooth stone carved with tiny stars. One exchange, then another. Then, one evening, the strangers step into view. They stand at the edge of the trees. They do not enter. They do not speak, but they stand, faces solemn, eyes wide, hands visible. And the villagers, they step out too. You, your wife, Marin. Even then, there is no shouting, no orders, no begging, just presence. The woman with the bundle lifts a hand. Inside her arms, a child, swaddled tight, sleeping. She nods. You nod in return. And for a moment, the air between you feels less like a border and more like a bridge. The frost thickens on the fields that night, but somehow it feels warmer than it did before. The first snow comes in silence. It begins as a whisper in the late afternoon air, a strange stillness, the kind that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand like sentries. Then flurries, soft as breath. Pale ghosts tumbling from the gray sky, landing on shoulders, rooftops, and the waiting earth without a sound. By dusk, the valley is wrapped in white. You watch from your doorway, your hands wrapped around a wooden cup of tea steeped in mint and pine needles. The children rush outside barefoot for a moment, laughing and yelping, just to feel the first snow touch their skin. Your wife lets them, then quickly pulls them back inside, their feet pink and numb, their laughter echoing in the warm air. The world is hushed. The hills disappear behind veils of falling snow. The stream slows beneath a growing layer of ice. Even the trees seem to bend inward, as if bracing for something more than winter. This is the season of endurance. Within the village, homes glow like lanterns. Wood smoke drifts in lazy ribbons from chimneys. Meals are simpler now, broth thickened with root vegetables, bread dark and dense. Water is boiled in great copper pots and stored in jars wrapped in cloth to keep them from freezing. At the edge of the forest, the shelter still stands. Its roof now heavy with snow, but the smoke from its chimney remains steady. You see it each morning, a sign of life. A promise that warmth still beats at the border. Then one evening, a sound, knocking, not frantic, not fearful. 3 slow, deliberate taps on your door. You open it cautiously. There she stands, the woman from the shelter, the one who held the child. She is cloaked in thick wool, a hood pulled low, her boots stained with frost. Her cheeks are red from the cold. In her arms, the baby sleeps, swaddled in a woven blanket the color of night. She holds out a parcel, a square of cloth, tied with twine. You take it without a word and nod, stepping aside to let her inside. But she does not cross the threshold. She only smiles, a small, tired smile, and then turns and walks back into the snow, her footsteps barely leaving a trail behind. Inside, you untie the parcel, dried fish, a twist of smoked salt, 2 small bundles of sage and pine resin, and a charm, simple, carved from bone, shaped like a hand reaching upward. You show your wife, she says nothing. She doesn't have to. This is not barter. It is a gift, a symbol. The strangers have given back, not out of debt, but choice. The next day, you and 3 others gather supplies. You carry blankets, firewood, and several jars of preserved broth to the edge of the trees. You leave them on a sled near the shelter, a gentle courtesy. The path between village and stranger has become one of respect now. Not without boundaries, but no longer marked by fear. And slowly, something new begins to bloom. One day, Marin's daughter returns from gathering water with a story. A boy from the shelter appeared beside the stream. He said nothing, just smiled and pointed toward a patch of ice, warning her of its thinness, then vanished into the trees. Another day, Isabeau finds a woven basket at the edge of the orchard. Inside, mushrooms, clean and neatly sorted, a sprig of dried lavender rests on top. The strangers remain apart, but not separate. At the solstice, then calls for the gathering. No songs this year, no dancing, but a fire in the grove as always in a circle formed by those who remain. You bring your family. The villagers wear garlands of evergreen and ribbons tied with wishes. One by one, Each steps forward to place a token in the fire, a pine cone, a carved charm, a strip of cloth with names written in ash, offerings to the season, to memory, to the future. Then a sound, not from the circle, from the trees. A voice, low, melodic, singing. The language is unfamiliar, but the cadence is gentle, like water over stone, like wind through bare branches. The villagers still, no one moves. The song continues, weaving through the air like smoke. Then it fades, not abruptly, not in fear. It simply trails off into the hush. Then is the first to speak. Let it stand, she says. Let it be. The circle finishes, and no one speaks of fear that night, only of grace. You return home with your children asleep in your arms, their faces flushed from firelight and snow. Your wife walks beside you, her fingers laced with yours, her breath slow and quiet. Before you sleep, you step outside once more. The stars have returned, clear, cold, brilliant. You glance toward the trees, toward the shelter, toward the smoke still rising, thin and faithful, into the dark. And you understand something. Not everything broken is lost. Not every stranger is a threat. Sometimes survival is not just about walls and rules, but about choosing to reach across the distance, if only to place a gift gently on the snow, and step back and wait. And so the winter deepens, and yet somehow, warmth remains. The new year begins without fanfare. There are no trumpets, no feasts, no declarations, just snow, thick and constant, and the slow breath of a valley that continues to hold itself together beneath layers of silence. The days blend one into the next, their rhythms shaped by firewood, hunger, and light. The sun lingers only briefly before vanishing behind the hills, and the cold creeps through every crack, every seam. But the people endure, and so do the strangers. The shelter still stands, and each morning, the faint ribbon of smoke rises into the gray. You watch it often now, not with caution, but with quiet habit, the way one watches a familiar tree or a path walked many times, a part of the landscape. Inside the village, the tone has changed. There is no formal meeting, no official word, but slowly, the rules bend, soften. Marin begins leaving parcels by the path in full daylight, no longer hiding the act. Your wife prepares salves in small clay pots and places them where the newcomers will find them. Even Thang, gruff and silent, has begun speaking of the others, not with suspicion, but with weariness, like one speaking of long-lost kin. And then one morning, something unexpected, a knock, not at your door, but at the gathering hall. You are there when it happens, helping carry dried meats from the cellar. The sound, firm, deliberate, echoes through the narrow entryway. For a moment, no one moves. Then you open it, and there she is again, the woman with the child. Only this time she is not alone. A boy stands beside her, perhaps 12 years old. Pale, thin, but with clear eyes and steady legs. His hands are clasped behind his back, and his cheeks are flushed from the cold. The woman nods once, then speaks. I would like to ask for learning. The words are simple, but they land like thunder. It is Thin who answers, stepping forward from the hearth. What kind of learning? She asks. The woman places a hand gently on the boy's shoulder. For him, he can read a little, write too. Before everything, I would like him to keep it. Dan stares at her a long moment. Her face is unreadable. Then slowly she turns to Marin. Fetch the reader's board, she says. It is a plain slab of oak, painted with letters and numbers. A tool used long ago to teach village children before the sickness took the schoolroom and its teacher. It has sat unused for years. Now, it is brought into the light. The boy's eyes widen. He says nothing, but the hope in his face is unmistakable. Dan lays it on the long table and places a piece of charcoal beside it. You come, she says, each morning, while the sun holds. You do not stay, you do not wander, and he learns. The woman nods. She does not cry, but something breaks in her face, some barrier of distance, and you see it, relief. The next day, the boy returns, and the next. He learns quickly. By the third week, 2 more children arrive, one from the shelter, another from the village. They sit side by side, not speaking, but scribbling letters in the soot-covered board. Then watches them all with her arms crossed and her brow knit in something like approval. You begin to notice other changes. A man from the shelter helps haul water to the upper well. A village woman leaves bread on the bench and pretends not to notice when it disappears. A game of stones and twigs begins outside the healer's house, played by hands both familiar and new. No one says the word welcome, but something deeper than words takes root. Still, not all are at ease. One evening, Johann speaks beside the fire. We must remember what silence costs, he says, what one cough can mean. His words are not cruel, only tired. Then answers with a glance toward the children, still practicing by the light of the fire. We remember, she says, but we also grow. The frost deepens in February. One morning, the stream is frozen solid. You must break the ice with stones just to draw water, and your fingers ache with cold no matter how tightly you wrap them. The goat grows sluggish. The hens lay fewer eggs. You ration more carefully now, counting every root, every pinch of salt. Still, you have enough. And when the strangers share a bundle of smoked rabbit and dried chicory root, the village does not refuse. One night, a storm comes, hard and fast, with winds that rattle doors and bend trees low. Snow piles against the homes like a second roof, and for 2 days no one leaves their doors except to clear paths and check for drifts. On the third morning, the sky clears, blue, cold, wide. And beside the fire path a gift appears, a bundle of dried flowers tied with twine, elderflower, yarrow, mullein, medicinal herbs, left by someone who knows what they are, knows how to gather them, knows how to give without asking. You find it beside the stone and smile. Later, when you bring it to Thene, she runs her fingers across the stems and says only one thing. They're ready. You do not need to ask what she means. Spring will come. But when it does, the valley will no longer be divided. It will be whole, quietly, carefully, together. And until then, you endure. You endure because the snow falls softly now. Because the fire between strangers burns brighter than the one within any single heart. Because a child is learning to read beside the echo of a world once shattered. And that, more than anything, is proof that life has not just survived, it has begun again. The days lengthen, almost without notice. It begins with a subtle change in the light, a pale gold that lingers just a little longer on the rooftops. The way it glances off the frost not as a threat, but as a promise. Then come the drips, steady and rhythmic, from eaves and branches. Snow shrinks back into the soil. The stream, once locked beneath thick ice, cracks open with a sound like distant thunder, and its voice, low and gurgling, returns to the valley. Spring is not here, but it is near enough to scent. Inside the village, people begin to stir with a new kind of urgency. Sleds are repaired and stored. Rope is mended. Seeds are counted, sorted, measured. The stores have lasted the worst of the cold, but they will not hold forever. You feel it in your own hands, the call to prepare, not for survival, but for renewal. Each morning you rise with the frost still clinging to your breath. You help repair the fence near the orchard, its slats broken by heavy snow. Isabeau tends to the tools, sharpening edges dulled by months of stillness. Your wife begins checking the soil beneath the snowmelt, digging with her fingers, pressing it between her palms as if it were the pulse of the earth itself. And still the shelter stands, not as a boundary now, but as a part of the whole. Children now move freely between it and the village, though always in pairs, always under watchful eyes. They play near the thawing banks of the stream, building miniature boats from bark and string, setting them adrift with shouts and laughter that sound almost like the old world. The boy who first learned his letters with Then now teaches the smaller ones. He carries the reader's board with pride, his face serious, his hands stained with soot and charcoal. He never speaks much, but his eyes burn with a quiet fire, the kind that says he knows what was lost, and what must never be forgotten. Then, one morning, a discovery. You're foraging with Isabeau along the southern edge of the valley, where the forest begins to thin and the first shoots of green dare to rise between patches of snow. That's when you find it. A camp, long abandoned, just bones now, ashes, a rusted pot, the frame of a canvas tent collapsed into itself. There are scraps of cloth frozen into the ground, an old boot, a broken doll. You crouch beside the fire pit. The ashes are long cold, but you reach into them anyway, brushing aside the snow. Beneath it, you find something unexpected, a string of beads, crude, carved from wood and stone, but strung with care, each one unique. Isabeau picks it up gently, brushing the snow away. She doesn't speak for a long time. When she finally does, her voice is barely more than a whisper. They made it this far. You know what she means. Whoever they were, fleeing from somewhere, heading towards something. They didn't die in a field or a ditch. They made it here, close enough to the valley to breathe the same air, to look upon the same sky. And yet they did not cross the line. Perhaps they never found it, or perhaps they did and turned back. You bury what remains, not for ritual, for dignity. You mark the place with a small cairn, stones laid one atop the other in a gentle spiral. No name, no cross, just presence. When you return, the sky has softened to dusk, and the smoke from the chimneys rises in lazy curls. You do not tell the children what you found, but you tell them. She nods solemnly. Then, after a long silence, she says, "We will plant something there in spring." A gesture, a vow. The forgotten will not be lost. In the days that follow, the strangers begin to step closer. One of them, a woman with graying hair and a deep scar along her jaw, begins helping in the forge. She says little, but her skill with tools is undeniable. The village blacksmith, a stout man named Bran, watches her work and finally mutters, "She hammers cleaner than I do." Another, younger man with bright eyes and a limp, joins the efforts in the orchard. He whistles as he works, a high, wandering tune that makes even the old trees seem to lean closer, as if listening. No one announces their welcome, but no one questions it either. One evening, during a gathering by the fire, your wife pulls out her spindle. She begins to spin thread by hand, slow, steady circles. Then, to your surprise, she invites the woman from the forge to sit beside her. She hands her a bundle of wool and shows her how to card it. The woman smiles, not with her mouth, but with her whole face. It is the first smile you've seen from her. The fire crackles. Someone begins to hum. The tune is old, worn with use, but it weaves through the air like thread, and others begin to join. Voices, soft and uneven at first, then stronger. They don't sing for joy. They sing for memory, for the weight of what has passed, for the fragile, precious thread of what still remains. As the song fades, Isabeau leans toward you and whispers, "When spring comes, it will all change." You nod, because you know. Spring will not just bring green shoots and sun-warmed soil. It will bring decision. Do the strangers stay? Do they become part of the valley? Do the people open their arms fully, or only enough to say they tried? But for now, for this moment, the fire is shared, and so is the silence that follows it. Not empty, but full. By the middle of March, the snow begins to retreat for good. It recedes like a tide, drawing back from the stone walls, from the orchard roots, from the narrow footpaths that thread through the valley like veins. Beneath it, the earth returns, wet, dark, alive. The first green blades pierce the soil, defiant and trembling. Crocuses bloom along the fence posts, bees reappear, cautious scouts from a world reborn. And with this slow, delicate awakening, the valley begins to breathe again. The work resumes in earnest. You rise each morning before the sun clears the ridge, your hands already calloused from splitting logs and sharpening tools. With Bran, the blacksmith, you repair the wheels of the old cart, its frame warped from frost and time. With Isabeau, you take inventory of the seeds, counting lentils, barley, peas, wrapping each in cloth like coins before a journey. The children roam farther now, their laughter trailing behind them like birdsong. They chase chickens, weave flower crowns, and return with mud up to their knees and stories tumbling from their mouths. They are wilder than before, stronger too. The sickness never touched them, but the world did, and they wear the weight of it like small shields across their hearts. Among the newcomers, a shift has occurred. They no longer live only at the edge of the forest. One by one, they have begun to help build new structures, not grand houses, but modest dwellings near the orchard and stream. The village, at first reluctant, now offers materials without hesitation. Cut timber, spare nails, bundles of thatch. A boy from the shelter shares bread with the girl who once hid behind her mother's skirt at the mere sight of him. She laughs now when he shows her how to climb the plum tree without falling. And on the first true warm day, when the sun finally lingers long enough to coax sleeves to the elbow and shawls from shoulders, then calls for the planting. Not just seeds, but something more, a gesture. The cairn you and Isabeau built weeks before, now cleared of snow, is the place chosen. The villagers walk there in silence, winding their way through the greening woods. The newcomers follow. No one speaks. Even the children are quiet. Dan stands before the stones. Her hands are empty. Her voice is low. "We plant because we remember," she says, "and because we are still here." From her cloak, she draws a handful of seeds, wildflowers mixed and unmarked. She scatters them across the soil, then steps aside, others follow. Your wife brings thyme and sage, Marin bulbs of daffodil, Bran 3 apple pits he's carried all winter in his coat. Even the newcomers add their offerings, an herb you don't recognize, a carved feather, a piece of polished quartz. When it's done, no words are spoken, no prayers. But in that silence something deeper stirs, a tether, a root. The next morning a robin nests in the crook of a newly placed beam at the edge of the village square. You take it as a sign, build, and so you do. A proper schoolhouse is begun, nothing large, just a single-room shelter with wide windows and a stone hearth. The children carry the stones, the adults the timber. Even Then hauls mortar in a wooden pail, her back bent, her jaw set. And day by day, as the walls rise, so does something else. The feeling that this village, this fragile world stitched together by grief and resilience, is becoming whole again. Isabeau begins teaching beside Thane now. Her hands have grown steady. She mixes tinctures with practiced ease and teaches your wife how to pull a splinter without leaving a trace. When a stranger's child wakes in the night with fever, it is your wife who goes, and Isabeau who stands beside her, holding the cloth, whispering calming words. The fever breaks. Trust deepens. One night, as the fire crackles and the moon hangs high, the villagers gather for no reason at all. There is no illness, no storm, no announcement. They simply come, sharing soup stories, the rhythm of spoons tapping bowls, of babies gurgling, of elders nodding off beside the hearth. The woman with the scar speaks for the first time. Not a long speech, just a story about a tree that grew through the floor of her old house, and how she led it, how it pushed through the ceiling and into the sky, and how she planted another when she fled, even though she knew she'd never see it grow. The room is quiet after, not heavy, just still. That night, as you lie beside your wife beneath the patchwork quilt, you listen to the wind stirring in the trees. It no longer sounds like a warning, but like music returning after a long absence. The world has not healed, not completely, but it has begun. And tomorrow, there will be digging and mending and teaching and laughing, and maybe, just maybe, the start of something even more difficult than surviving, belonging. The schoolhouse is finished by the first true rain of spring. It stands humbly on the edge of the village, where the ground tilts gently toward the stream. Its walls are smooth, packed tightly with clay and straw, and its roof smells of new thatch and clean air. The windows, though small, let in soft morning light that pools across the worn wood of the single table and the stone hearth near the far wall. There is no bell above the door, only a carved branch, twisted like a question mark, hung there with twine. You help carry the bench inside. Isabeau lays down the first slate board, and your wife stacks bundles of chalk beside it, wrapped in bits of cloth to keep them dry. A book, one of only a handful to survive the worst year, sits in the center of the table. Its leather binding is cracked, the pages yellowed, but the words still live there, waiting to be read aloud. When the children arrive, they hesitate at the doorway. Not from fear, but reverence. It is the first place built not from need, but from hope. They enter slowly, seating themselves on rough benches, some still dusty with straw. The boy who learned first sits proudly at the front, his hands folded neatly on the table. A girl from the newcomers sits beside him, eyes wide, her fingers tracing the edge of the wood. Then lights the hearth. Then she speaks. We remember through words, and we rebuild with them too. The lesson begins. Outside, the rain whispers against the roof. The rhythm of life has changed, not all at once, but like the season itself, it unfolds in quiet increments until you wake one morning and realize the world no longer trembles at every knock on the door. There is laughter again, not just the children's, but the low chuckle of Marin as she slips in the mud on her way to the herb garden, or the rare but unmistakable bark of a laugh from Bran when the forge bellows smoke and blackens his face. Even Thinny smiles more now, a corner of the mouth, a narrowing of the eyes, but you've learned to read such things. The newcomers work alongside the villagers, not in silence, but in conversation. They learn the names of the trees, the pathways, the old stones that mark the corners of forgotten boundaries. They ask questions. They offer knowledge in return. The woman with the scar, her name is Ellen, begins repairing tools without being asked. Her fingers are deft, her eye keen. The boy with the limp teaches the village children a game from his old town, one that uses only stones and rhythm and makes them laugh so hard they fall over in the dirt. And one evening, the village gathers in the orchard. It is the first gathering with no fire, only lanterns strung between branches, gently swaying in the dusk. There is music, a reed flute played softly by one of the elders. Someone claps, then another joins. Soon there is rhythm, not quite a dance, but close. Your daughter weaves between the trees with a crown of daisies in her hair. Your son tries to climb a branch too high and falls into the arms of the newcomer boy, who now reads faster than anyone. No one draws a line between who lived here first and who came later. The storm that once divided has softened, but the past still lingers. You see it in the eyes of the older ones when they pause in their work, staring off toward the hills. You hear it in the way people say the word before, not as a reference, but as a shadow. One morning, while foraging near the cairn you built in the woods, you find something strange. Footprints, fresh, deeper than a deer's, human, but not from the village, not from the shelter. They lead west, away from the valley. You follow for a while, not out of suspicion, but wonder. They are not hurried, not panicked, just steady. You find no one, only a small leather pouch left at the base of an old pine. Inside, a ring, rusted with age, a small scrap of cloth, a note, 3 words. I remember you. You bring it to Dini. She touches the note, then the ring, then closes her eyes. They were here, she says. Whoever they were, they passed through and left this. You ask if she knows what it means. She shakes her head. But not everything is meant to be understood. The ring is placed in the schoolhouse, beneath a pane of glass. The children ask what it is. A promise, you say. As spring deepens, the valley changes with it. The stream swells, the orchard blossoms. Bees return in force, their low hum a constant thrum beneath the rhythm of work. The fences are mended, the paths swept clean. New roots take hold, and so do new names. Children born after the sickness now toddle through the grass. They will never remember the worst of it. Only the warmth of bread rising in ovens, the smell of wet earth, the sound of voices returning like birds from a long migration. You are sitting one evening beneath the old tree near the schoolhouse, carving a spoon from ash wood, when Isabeau joins you. She sits without speaking, her hands folded, her eyes turned toward the hills. You ask her what she sees. She replies, a life I didn't know I was still allowed to have. You place the spoon in her lap. Then keep it, you say. Later that night, you pass the shelter, still standing, though empty now. It will be taken down soon, its materials used for a storehouse or perhaps a drying shed. But for now it remains, a monument to a line once drawn in fear, now crossed by kindness. And in its silence the wind hums softly through the slats, not mourning, but remembering. Not ending, but beginning again. The days grow warm and full. By the time the blossoms fall from the apple trees, replaced by tiny green fruit, the valley has taken on the low, steady rhythm of a place at peace. Children run barefoot from dawn until dusk, their feet stained with grass, their knees bruised from climbing and falling and climbing again. Smoke rises from chimneys only to cook now, not to warm, and the air smells of honey, soil, and morning bread. The illness, that word, once heavy, once ever present, has become something else. Not gone, never gone, but no longer the first shadow behind every thought. Now it drifts into the realm of before, like a bitter winter remembered while standing in the sun. You wake each morning before the light touches the valley floor, not because you must, but because you want to. You've grown to love the sound of the waking earth, the rustle of wind in tall grass, the gurgle of the stream growing stronger each day, the faint shifting of leaves in trees just beginning to thicken with green. There is still work. There is always work. But it no longer feels like survival. Now it feels like care. You spend your mornings mending tools and binding fence posts. Your wife tends the herb garden behind the schoolhouse where rosemary and mint stretch toward the sky in neat, stubborn rows. Isabeau has taken to painting. Simple strokes of charcoal on smooth bark, drawings of herbs, of trees, of faces. She places them quietly in the schoolhouse, never asking for praise, but the children stare at them in wonder. And the children, they have become the heart of the village. They are louder now, more fearless. They dance even when no one is watching. They carry the songs of two peoples in their voices. Old village hymns and the wordless tunes whistled by the newcomers. They blend them into something new, something uniquely theirs. They no longer separate into us and them. To them, there is only here. One afternoon, Ellen, the woman with the scar, gathers a group of them by the stream. She teaches them how to weave rushes into baskets. Her fingers are swift, patient. One by one, the children mimic her movements, their small hands tangling and fumbling, until finally, slowly, the first basket takes shape. Your daughter shows you hers that evening, holding it out with both hands as if it were gold. "Can I bring it to the gathering?" she asks. You nod. Of course. Because this spring, this season, is different. For the first time since the sickness came, the villagers have decided to hold a gathering that is not in mourning, not in ritual, but in joy. A true celebration. The entire week is spent preparing. Bunting is sewn from bits of old cloth, dyed with flowers and ash. Tables are dragged out into the open spaces between houses. A platform is built from salvaged wood near the schoolhouse, and someone paints it with swirling patterns of green and gold. People laugh more easily now. Even Thene, though she still refuses to dance, is caught humming as she grinds herbs beneath her window. When the day arrives, the whole valley gathers beneath the budding canopy of the orchard. There is no need for speeches. There are no banners, no proclamations, just food, music, and the quiet thrum of life returning fully to the bones of the place. A boy from the newcomers reads a poem he wrote about the stars. A girl from the village sings a song once reserved for weddings, her voice steady and clear. The old man Johann plays the reed flute again, his fingers trembling but sure. Then, as twilight creeps in, your daughter steps forward. She carries her basket, lined with wildflowers. She walks to the center of the orchard and, without being asked, begins to place one flower at the foot of each tree, one by one, and soon others follow. No one told them to do it, but something passes between them, a memory, a promise. They lay rosemary for remembrance, chamomile for peace, lavender for strength. No words, only gestures. The newcomers do the same, and when it is finished, the orchard is quiet, still, whole. Later, after the moon rises, you sit with your wife near the edge of the gathering. She rests her head on your shoulder, the fire crackles, laughter rises and falls like waves. "You know," she says softly, "I didn't think we'd live to see something like this." You place your hand over hers. "Neither did I." She turns her head, looks out across the gathering, but I think the valley was always waiting for it, even before the sickness, even before us. You consider that. How long had this land waited for gentleness? How many storms had it seen? How many years of toil, of fear, of loss? And now, in this small pocket of the world, something fragile and miraculous has grown. Not because of the people who claimed it, but because of those who chose to protect it, together. As the fire burns low, a child sings to herself, an old lullaby barely above a whisper. The notes float upward, catching in the branches, dancing with the leaves. And as your eyes close, your last thought is not of sorrow, nor of fear. It is this, that even after the darkest winter, the earth will remember how to bloom. The rains return in April, not the cruel, icy rains of late winter, but softer ones, gentle and patient, soaking into the earth rather than scouring it. They fall for days at a time, drumming on rooftops, trickling down tree trunks, turning footpaths into rivers of mud and washing the soot from every stone. The valley drinks deeply, and from the soaked soil rises a green so vivid it seems to hum with life. You begin to see color again. Blossoms on the apple trees, white and blush pink. Yellow bursts of dandelions in the orchard grass. Tiny blue violets threading along the edges of the paths. Your wife starts weaving them into garlands, hanging them above the doorway each morning like wards, like prayers. The children take to the puddles like fish to water. They leap and splash and shriek with delight, their cloaks plastered with mud, their laughter echoing off the damp stone walls. No one stops them, not anymore, because every soaked boot, every giggle, is proof of something once thought impossible, a world in motion again. Life returning. One morning, after a long night of rain, you walk the eastern path with Isabeau. The sky is heavy with silver clouds, but the birds have returned in full voice, larks and finches and the occasional cuckoo calling out like bells in the fog. You walk not to check anything in particular, but simply because the earth feels alive beneath your feet. The stream beside the path has overflowed, carving new rivulets through the moss and stones. The trees lean a little farther from the path than you remember, their branches heavy with droplets. Then you see it, a figure, not far ahead, bent beside the stream. They are not from the village. You know every face by now. This one is unfamiliar, cloaked, hood drawn up, a satchel slung over one shoulder. You stop. Isabeau lays a hand on your arm. The figure does not move with panic, nor in haste. They rise slowly, stretching as if they've been kneeling a long time. Then, sensing you, they turn. A man, older, his beard gray, eyes dark but calm. He raises his hands, open palms out. You approach carefully. No words yet, just presence. He nods. I've come seeking silence, he says. The voice is rough, like gravel softened by water. You glance at Isabeau. She nods. Then you found it, she says. His name is Warren. He is not ill. He carries no fever, no cough, no sores. He has traveled from far north, where he says the land has turned to ash in memory. Entire towns swallowed, not by plague, not now, but by hunger, by despair, by lawlessness. He says he walked alone for weeks before finding the edge of the forest near your valley. He felt something there, exactly, but stillness. The villagers meet that evening. Warren does not join them now. He waits outside the orchard beside the carving stone. You watch as the debate unfolds. Some are wary. The pain of the past has not vanished. It lingers like the last chill of winter beneath the surface. What if more follow? What if he brings something unseen? But others, many more now, speak differently. We cannot claim a place of healing and deny others the same, Marin says. Even silence must be shared, says Theni. And so it is decided. He may stay. A place is offered to him, not far from the old shelter site, in the glade that now blooms with lavender and rosemary from last year's seeds. He accepts it without ceremony, begins to build slowly, quietly. You help him without being asked. He says little, but his presence becomes part of the rhythm. Each morning he carries water to the schoolhouse. Each evening he walks the orchard paths, pausing now and then to listen, not to birds or voices, but to the quiet itself. The children begin to call him the stone listener. One day, he carves a message into the base of an old oak near the path. Stillness is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of peace. No one erases it. Spring deepens. The goats birth kids, wobbly-legged and wide-eyed. Your son names one of them Storm after the wind that blew open your door months ago and broke the latch you never quite fixed. Your daughter begins writing small poems and hiding them in the cracks of the schoolhouse wall. You find one. It reads, "The world fell down and grew again." A little softer this time. You keep it in your pocket. Every so often you take it out and reread it, just to remind yourself that survival is not just breath, it is becoming. One morning, Warren brings you something. A wooden box. Inside, wrapped in linen, is a piece of parchment. Ancient, torn, but legible. A map, hand-drawn. It shows valleys and rivers, villages lost and names forgotten. And at the edge of it, written in faded ink, where the sky bends low enough to listen. This was once called the Bellfold, he says quietly, the valley where silence sings. He looks out across your home. I think you found it again. That night, the stars are brighter than they've been in weeks. You sit with your wife beneath the budding pear tree, the children asleep, the valley still. You listen to the wind, to the stream, to your own heartbeat, and you realize there is nothing more to fear. Because this place once broken, now hums with life. Because the doors are no longer shut. Because when the world came undone, you did not choose the sword. You chose the garden. And from it, everything has grown. By early May, the valley is in full bloom. The hills wear a green so lush it seems almost unreal, painted freshly each morning by the dew. The meadows are a sea of wildflowers, bluebells, daisies, poppies, and every breeze carries their perfume through the village lanes, slipping beneath doors and through open windows like a welcome guest. The days are long now, golden and full. Time is marked not by bells or calendars, but by the movements of light, the way the sun filters through leaves at noon, the way shadows stretch lazily in the late afternoon. Children are up before the roosters, racing barefoot toward the stream, their laughter already echoing before the mist has risen. You no longer need to remind them to be careful. They know this land now. It knows them. And you have become something else, too. Not just a survivor, but a keeper, a mender, a witness to the quiet flourishing of a place reborn. Warren has built his home with care. It stands at the far edge of the orchard, tucked among hazel trees and sun-bleached stones. He keeps it simple, just a single room with a wide doorway and no door. Inside, the floor is covered in woven rushes, and the shelves hold nothing but scrolls, carved objects, and carefully bound bundles of herbs. He speaks little, but he listens well. People come to him now, not for healing, like they go to Thini, not for guidance, like they go to Marin, but for something else, something slower. They sit beside him on his worn bench, sometimes for hours, saying nothing. And when they leave, they seem lighter, as if the silence itself had carried some of their burden away. One morning, your son returns from Warren's with a carved object in his hand. A bird, wings outstretched, shaped from cherry wood. He told me to place it high, the boy says, so it can remember the wind. You help him tie it to the tallest tree in the orchard. It spins there gently, catching every breeze. That same week, your daughter begins writing in earnest. Not just scraps now, not just poems and cracks, but full pages. Stories of the valley, of its people, of what came before. She writes with your wife's quill, her brow furrowed, her lips moving silently with every sentence. She says she wants to make a book, not for now, but for later. For when we forget, she explains. You kiss her forehead and tell her some things are worth writing twice. The schoolhouse is full each day now, more than just children attend. Ellen teaches numbers in the mornings. Your wife takes over afternoons, reading from the old book and letting the children ask questions. Why did the sickness come? Where did it go? Will it return? She never lies, but she never frightens them either. She speaks gently, with truth, and always ends with something hopeful. The world remembers how to heal, she tells them one day. So must we. In the fields, planting continues. The barley shoots rise strong, their green tips swaying in unison. The soil has been kind this year, rich and soft, crumbling beneath your fingers like cake. You till it with a new rhythm, slower but more deliberate. Not with the urgency of fear, but with the patience of belief. The newcomers work beside the villagers without thought now. Lines have blurred. No one speaks of before the sickness with bitterness, only reverence. Even Thenning, who once counted every leaf and measured every silence like a warning, begins training an apprentice, Ellen's eldest daughter, whose hands are steady and eyes quick. I won't live forever, Thane says, squinting into the sun. But the knowledge must, you nod, because you've begun to feel that too. Time no longer frightens you. It simply asks to be remembered. Then, one quiet evening, something unusual. A bell rings, not in alarm, but gently, once, then twice, a rhythm known by all. The villagers come slowly, drawn from their homes like birds to a late-season sky. They meet beneath the orchard where lanterns have already been lit. Marin stands at the front beside Warren and Thane. She speaks without raising her voice. It's been 1 year, she says. No one needs her to say from what. They all know. 1 year since the plague's breath last crossed their borders. 1 year since the old world ended, and the new one began. Marin looks around, her gaze steady. There are no walls around us now. No fear at the edge of the trees. But that does not mean we forget. This peace, this life, we have made it together, and we keep it together. With care, with listening, with kindness. Warren steps forward then. He places a stone at the center of the circle. It's simple, smooth, etched with a single line, curved like the horizon. He says only one word, anchor. Each family places something beside it. A flower, a carving, a ribbon. Your family places your daughter's first written page, folded carefully, tied with thread. No speeches, no songs, just presence. The stars emerge above, one by one. Someone lights a fire. Someone else begins to hum, soft and low, like the sound of rain returning after a long drought. And you sit there, holding your wife's hand, your children tucked against your side. You watch the flames dance, and you know, this is not just survival. This is the beginning of legacy. And it is only just beginning to take root. The summer begins with warmth that feels earned, not just by the sun, which rises earlier now and lingers long after the last tool has been set aside, but by the people, by the valley itself, as though every breath of wind and blade of grass remembers the hardship that came before and blooms harder for having survived it. There is work, as always, but it is no longer a burden. It is a rhythm. Your hands know it now without thought. The spade fits your grip like it was carved for you alone. The soil parts easily, ready for seed. You move through your tasks not as someone trying to escape suffering, but as someone tending to the earth like a story passed from one generation to the next. This is how you live now, and how you teach your children to live. The schoolhouse has grown too small. On warm days, the lessons spill into the grass beneath the elms. The children sit in circles, notebooks and slates balanced on their knees, the buzz of bees blending with the scratch of charcoal and chalk. Your daughter stands before them now sometimes. She reads her own stories aloud, voice clear and steady. Tales of the early days, of the shelter by the trees, of the fire watched from a distance. She does not embellish, but she does not hide the fear. And because of that, the stories glow with truth. The others listen, even the youngest, even Warren, who stands at the edge of the grove like a stone statue, nodding with each sentence. One day, she reads a story about a tree that grew in the shape of a question mark. It was a small tree, she says, bent by wind and weight, but its roots were deep, and it bloomed again and again, each spring stronger than the last. When she finishes, no one speaks for a long moment. Then someone claps, and then another, until the sound swells, gentle and full. Afterward, then it takes her aside. You should copy these, she says, handing her a new book of blank pages. Not for now, for after. Your daughter looks down at it like it's made of gold. And for her, it is. The valley prepares for midsummer. It's not the same festival it once was, before the sickness, before the world turned. But something inside the people has healed enough to long for celebration again. Not just memory, but joy. The preparations begin slowly. Color returns, not just in wildflowers, but in cloth. In banners dyed with crushed berries and soot. In beads carved from shell and bone, strung onto strings and worn around wrists like promises. A tree is chosen in the center of the orchard, tall and young, with branches reaching wide like open arms. It is dressed with streamers and garlands and stories written on parchment and tied with thread. Stories from everyone. You write one too. A quiet memory of the first knock on your door, of the woman who stood in the snow with her child. You end it with a single sentence. I did not open the door, but I did not turn away. You leave your name unsigned. It doesn't matter. The story belongs to all of you now. The newcomers write stories as well. One writes of the road from the north, how every step farther south felt like a heartbeat returning. Another writes of a brother lost but remembered, whose name is now carried in song. Ellen's story is short. I learned to fix what I did not break. On Midsummer Eve, the entire village gathers. No walls, no boundaries, no division, just people. Some dance, some eat, some watch. Children weave between the adults like fireflies, their hands full of petals, their mouths full of honey cake. A young boy recites a poem about the moon and forgets the last lines, and everyone laughs with kindness, not mockery. Even thin dances, not for long and not gracefully, but enough. You watch from the edge, your wife beside you, Isabeau nearby, her hair unbraided and loose for the first time in months. The air smells of thyme and wood smoke and something sweeter, something like peace. As night deepens, someone calls for a fire story. You're surprised when Warren steps forward. He holds no paper, no book. He speaks slowly. There was once a village in a valley that the world forgot, he says. A place where sorrow came and sat beside every hearth and would not leave. And the people, they wept, and they waited, and they nearly gave in. But, he continues, they did one thing right. They did not lock the last door. He lets the silence settle. Then he steps back, and the fire crackles like applause. Later, after the fire has dimmed, and the children sleep curled in cloaks on the grass, you walk alone to the edge of the orchard. The wind stirs, and something stirs in you. You think of how the valley looked 1 year ago, how your hands trembled each time you opened a shutter, how every cough was a thunderclap, how silence felt like mourning. And now this, not perfection, not paradise, but presence, community, continuance. A seed planted not in untouched soil, but in the ashes of what came before. You kneel, place your palm against the earth. It is warm and alive, and you whisper, perhaps to the wind or to the stars above or to yourself alone, we are still here. And this time, it doesn't sound like a prayer. It sounds like a truth. Summer deepens, thick and golden. The air grows heavier now, clinging to skin like honey. Bees move slower in the heat, their wings a low hum beneath the trees. The river, swollen in spring, now runs clear and smooth between the rocks, warm enough for bare feet, cool enough to draw laughter from even the sternest of faces. The days stretch long and drowsy. In the village, time begins to measure itself differently, not by fear or scarcity, but by small rituals: the turning of soil, the baking of bread, the quiet murmur of voices reading aloud. Each household finds its rhythm. Mornings are for tending, afternoons are for sharing, evenings for sitting with one another while the sky turns the color of ripe peaches. The schoolhouse becomes more than a place of learning. It becomes a library, a meeting place, a sanctuary. New shelves are built along the walls, filled not only with books, but with tokens, drawings, carvings, keepsakes. Your daughter keeps a careful list of each object and its story, written in her neat, deliberate script. She now teaches twice a week, helping the younger children form their letters beneath the open windows while the breeze rustles the parchment like quiet applause. One of the children asks her, "When will the world be like it was before?" She pauses, then smiles, soft and unhurried. "I hope it never is," she says, and no one questions her, because they know what she means. The valley continues to heal in small ways. A patch of wild strawberries appears near the northern trail, and the children raid it daily, returning with red-stained lips and guilty grins. A new calf is born in the village's shared pasture, black and white, long-legged and curious. They name him Wooly, despite the fact that he is nothing of the sort. People begin to visit the cairn in the woods again, not in mourning, but in reverence. Some leave feathers, others leave poems. Once you find a small clay bowl filled with rainwater and sprigs of mint. You never learn who placed it there, but you are glad they did. The newcomers have long since ceased being newcomers. They are now simply neighbors. Elin teaches metalwork to the oldest children, showing them how to coax shape from heat and hammer. Her scar is almost invisible now, faded into the tan of her cheek, but no one forgets how it came to be. And because of that, she has become one of the most trusted voices in the valley. Warin speaks more now, still slowly, still sparsely, but his words are always listened to. He tends the grove near his home like a temple, pruning, watering, planting in silence. People leave their worries with him, not expecting answers, but knowing they will be held. One evening, he joins you by the stream. You sit together in companionable quiet, watching dragonflies flicker like sparks across the surface. After a time, he says, "When I came here, I thought I had nothing left to give." You glance at him. "And now?" He smiles, eyes half closed. "I know better." You nod and say nothing more, because the truth doesn't need echo. Later that month, the sky changes. The clouds grow taller, heavier, not with winter's threat, but with summer's reckoning. Thunderstorms, they come swiftly, sweeping in from the western hills. Rain slams against rooftops, winds tear through the orchard, flinging leaves and petals across the fields. The stream swells again, angry and loud. But there is no panic. The people know what to do. Shutters are latched, roofs checked, chickens gathered, children wrapped in cloaks and carried indoors with laughter instead of fear. You watch the storm from your doorway, your arm around your wife, the warmth of her beside you as grounding as stone. There is a flash, a boom, the kind that once would have made the whole valley flinch. But now it is just weather. It passes, as all things do. When the rain stops, the air is clean, sharp with petrichor and the scent of bruised grass. You step into the quiet and breathe. One morning, a traveler arrives. Not a refugee, not a pilgrim, just a man with a walking stick, a pack on his back, and eyes wide with wonder. He does not knock on doors. He waits near the path, hands folded, head bowed. Your son is the first to see him. You walk to him slowly. He does not beg. He does not ask. He simply says, "I heard there was a place where the sickness passed, but the people stayed." You look him over. Dust on his boots, no fever, no trembling. He looks tired, but whole. You bring him water, and later, bread. He sits by the old shelter, which no longer holds people, but tools and stories and shade. He will not stay, he says. He is just passing through, but he promises to carry the story forward, to tell others, to show that healing is not a myth. And before he leaves, he presses something into your hand, a folded square of linen. Inside, a scrap of parchment. A name, a town you once heard of, far east, thought long lost. It's rebuilding, he says, slowly, like yours. You watch him disappear down the trail, and you know you are not alone. The world is awakening, valley by valley, hand by hand, and somewhere beyond these hills, other fires are being lit. Other children are learning to write. Other trees are growing to the shape of questions. And this small, quiet place, you help make it ready for them, for the future, for what comes next. The heat settles gently over the valley, not oppressive, but firm. It presses down in waves that shimmer over the fields, ripples that turn midday into something dreamlike and slow. The soil, once soft and pliant beneath your boots, now bakes into a firmer crust. You walk it still each morning, basket in hand, collecting the first heads of barley, early peas, and the round, blushing tomatoes that seem to have ripened overnight. This is the season of fulfillment, where what was sown is now touched, gathered, shared. The orchard hums with bees, so thick that their sound becomes a part of the air itself. You see them dart between blossoms and branches, working tirelessly as if they too understand that this moment, this balance between warmth and labor, is fragile and rare. The children run barefoot from house to house, their faces brown with sun, their arms full of food, messages, stories. The oldest have taken on responsibilities, collecting eggs, sweeping the schoolhouse, keeping the younger ones from venturing too close to the forest's edge. Your daughter leads them. No one asked her to. She simply stood up one morning and began, teaching songs to keep time while they worked, making small paper tokens as rewards, tiny stars, flowers, birds folded with patient hands. She speaks with kindness, but her voice has grown stronger, clearer. You hear it and realize she is no longer a child. Not entirely. Your son follows her everywhere now, mimicking her movements, repeating her phrases with a boy's delight. He has begun carrying a notebook of his own, scribbling sketches of leaves, tracks, clouds. His drawings aren't always clear, but he names each one with certainty, and that is enough. One afternoon, a breeze brings news. A small group of travelers reaches the valley's edge. 3 women, 1 child, a dog with a silver patch over its eye. They are sunburned and lean, but smiling. They carry with them a folded letter bearing the name of your valley. Someone told them, they say, that there was a place still standing, a place where peace grew in the bones of something broken. They do not ask to stay, they only ask to rest. The villagers, your neighbors, your friends, do not hesitate. The visitors are offered shade, bread, water, rest. Nothing more is asked of them. Nothing more is needed. They stay 4 days, and on the 5th morning they leave with arms full of seeds, wrapped bundles of herbs, and a small clay token carved with a sun. Carry this, your wife tells them, to remind you of warmth found. When they vanish into the tree line, the village feels no poorer, only more full, because giving has become a part of life now, a kind of breathing. As harvest begins, the valley becomes a hive. Everyone moves. Scythes are sharpened. Baskets are mended. Granaries are cleared and swept. There is a quiet urgency to it all. Not fear, not desperation, just the understanding that every ripe fruit is a gift with an edge and must not be wasted. You spend most of your days in the barley fields now. The grain is golden, tall, swaying like water under wind. With every swing of your blade, you remember the first planting, how the soil felt cold and uncertain beneath your hands, how no one was sure anything would grow. And now here it is, not a miracle, just a beginning made real. At night you lie beneath the stars with your wife. The air is warm, the insects sing, and the sky stretches vast above you. Sometimes you speak, sometimes not. Words are no longer needed, the way they once were. You have built something here together that no sickness, no storm, no silence could unravel. You sleep easily now and dream of nothing more than waking again. Then one day, a letter arrives, not spoken, not carried by traveler, but sent by fire. Smoke signals from the eastern ridge, 3 short puffs, 1 long. The pattern Thane once taught for distant greeting. You climb the ridge with Marin, Elin, and Waring, and when you reach the crest, you see them. Another village, far away but visible now, a cluster of rooftops, a field of sunflowers, a watchtower built from stone. People move below like ants, small, purposeful. A flag waves, yellow, no sign of sickness, no panic. You raise your hands. The signals begin. It is a slow language, but certain. You tell them, we are well, we are whole, we remember. Their reply, so are we. We are many, we are returning. You do not cheer, you do not cry, you only breathe, deeply, fully, and feel the air rush through you like something old and holy. The world is not healed, not yet, but it is reconnecting. Not as it was, full of noise and haste and greed, but smaller, slower, true. The night after the smoke signals, the schoolhouse remains lit well past dusk. Inside, your daughter writes, not a story, a record, a beginning of something larger. She writes of the first fire, the first bread, the first stranger, the first shared silence. She writes of what was lost, but more, of what was chosen. How the valley survived not through force, but through care. Through 100 tiny kindnesses no one would remember unless someone wrote them down. You ask her gently, why now? She looks at you, and her eyes shine like dusk, because someone else will need it one day. You nod and leave her to her task. As you step out, the wind carries the smell of summer rain, distant, clean, the promise of life not yet lived. You tilt your face to the wind and welcome it. The rain comes in the night, not in sheets, not with thunder, but soft and steady. A cleansing rain, the kind that makes the earth sigh. It patters gently on rooftops and trickles down the trunks of sleeping trees. You wake to its rhythm and do not move. You lie there, your wife's breath warm against your shoulder, and you listen. This is not the sound of fear. This is the sound of everything growing. By morning, the world is soaked and luminous. Leaves glisten like polished glass. The stream swells again, laughing as it tumbles over stones. Mud clings to boots and no one minds. Children splash barefoot through puddles, shrieking with delight, their clothes soaked to the knees, their hands smeared with wet petals and clay gift. And so is this day. You walk the orchard path slowly, not to work, just to see. Apples swell on the branches, their skins slick with droplets. The pear trees bend, heavy with promise. You pause beside the tree your son planted months ago, the one he named Storm. It has grown taller, not much, but enough to notice, enough to believe in. Warren joins you as he often does now. He carries no tools, only a bundle of dried herbs tied with twine. For then, he says, a thank you. He doesn't need to explain. The village feels it too, the shift, not just from season to season, but something deeper. A movement from survival to stewardship. You've stopped waiting for the next hardship, not because you believe it won't come, but because you've learned how to meet it. Not with panic, but with preparation and grace. At the edge of the eastern path, you find Elin with two others measuring timbers. They're building a bridge, a small one, to cross the stream at its narrowest bend. Not out of necessity, but out of curiosity. To reach the other side, she explains, brushing rain from her brow, to see what grows there. The idea spreads quickly. Plans are drawn, more hands join. Rope is braided, stakes carved, planks sanded smooth. It is the first structure built beyond the village border since the plague. Not just outward, but forward. When the bridge is finished, no ceremony is held. Instead, your daughter crosses it first, notebook in hand, a sprig of lavender behind her ear. She returns an hour later with wild grapes in her pockets and a sketch of a bird's nest drawn in careful charcoal. There's more forest, she says, but it's kind. And so the village walks further, in twos, then threes, then groups. New paths are worn into the grass. Mushrooms are gathered, saplings marked for transplanting. A grove of walnut trees is found, untouched and thriving. The world beyond was never lost, only waiting. As summer leans toward its end, the nights grow cooler again. Lanterns are lit earlier, smoke rises from hearths once more. The scent of roasted vegetables and herbs drifts through the village at dusk, and windows glow with a soft, golden hush. The children prepare for the turning season. They collect fallen leaves and press them into books. They trace them on parchment, name them by color and sound. Crimson crackle, gold whisper, ash hush. They invent rituals for the first night frost. They practice walking silently in the grass. You watch them and wonder what kind of people they will grow to be. Not just free from plague, but from the weight of forgetting. Because they carry the memory now. Not in fear, but in story. They know the valley did not escape the sickness. It transformed in its wake, and they are the ones who will carry that truth forward. One night, Danny gathers a group in the grove. The moon is high. The wind is still. The fire burns low. She does not speak long, only enough to say this. My time grows short. Not today, not tomorrow, but soon. No one interrupts. She looks at Ellen's daughter, now tall, steady, with eyes that see beyond what is in front of her. You will keep the ways, then it says. The girl nods, and something passes between them. A torch, a root, a trust. Back home, your wife stitches new blankets for the cool nights ahead. Your son gathers kindling and sorts it by size, explaining his system to anyone who will listen. Your daughter writes each evening by the window, her ink running low, her pages thick with lines. You watch them with quiet awe, and one evening, as the stars return in great wheeling swaths across the sky, you understand. The story is no longer yours alone. The valley has grown beyond your imagining, not bigger, just deeper. A well of memory, a cradle of becoming. You sit beside the fire, holding your wife's hand and whisper into the embers, "Let it be known we were here." And the flames answer softly. The mornings turn cool. Mist clings to the ground now, swirling low across the fields before the sun lifts it away. The valley wakes more slowly, more gently. You hear fewer roosters and more silence. Not the silence of fear, nor the silence of mourning, but the quiet of a world exhaling. A pause between chapters. Harvest has come and nearly gone. The grain is stored. The vegetables dried, pickled, salted, saved. The cellar smells of thyme, root, and smoke. Your hands are dry and cracked from the work. Your back sore from lifting, stooping, gathering. But the ache is good. The kind that tells you everything you touched will feed someone. That your work has weight, meaning. The orchard is nearly bare. Only a few stubborn apples cling to branches, red and gold like lanterns against the gray sky. The children climb for them in the afternoons, shrieking with laughter, daring the limbs to bend and sway. You let them. There is something sacred in letting joy linger before the frost. In the schoolhouse, lessons continue by firelight. The windows fog with breath and warmth. Coats and cloaks hang from every peg. Your daughter writes beside the hearth, quills scratching steadily. She is finishing the book now, the one she began in spring, a record of the valley's second birth. She will bind it herself, with leather gifted by Elin and linen threads spun from your wife's loom. She tells you she wants to leave it hidden. Not lost, she explains, but waiting, like the valley once was. You understand. Some stories must sleep before they are read. Preparations begin for the turning. The villagers speak of it as if it were a guest, not feared, but expected, welcomed even. The turning is not just the end of the harvest. It is the closing of the old year, a time of memory, of lanterns lit and set adrift on the stream, of silence held for those who did not see the new bloom. The children craft the lanterns from waxed paper and thin willow branches. They paint them with scenes from their lives, goats and gardens, stars and sunflowers, even the shelter, drawn now with smiling faces and open doors. Each lantern is different, each one a voice. The night of the turning arrives. You gather beneath the old ash tree at the stream's edge, the entire valley wrapped in wool and warmth. The air smells of fire and earth. No one speaks at first. Only the sound of water lapping gently against the banks and the breath of wind through the nearly bare trees. One by one, the lanterns are lit and set free. They drift slowly like glowing seeds on a dark river. Reflections shimmer beneath them. The current carries them around the bend and into the night, where their light joins the stars. Then it speaks. Her voice is rough now, softer, but steady. "We remember," she says, "for what we lost, for what we gave, for what we built." There are tears, but not grief, just gratitude. You feel your wife's hand slip into yours, her fingers cold, her grip sure. Your daughter leans against you, her head on your shoulder. Your son is asleep at your feet, arms wrapped around the carved wooden bird he still carries. And around you, the village breathes as one. The next day, the frost returns. It coats the grass in silver, turns every leaf brittle and bright. The stream slows, whispering beneath a skin of ice. Smoke curls from every chimney, and the sun lingers low, never quite warming the stones. Inside, everything is ready. The shutters are sealed. The root cellars are full. The hearts are steady. Even the animals seem to know. The dog with the silver patch, left behind by the travelers and now wholly your own, sleeps beside the hearth, dreaming of rabbits and summer dust. Isabeau knits beside him, humming a melody no one taught her. Ellen stirs a pot of stew, her back to the fire, her shoulders finally at ease. Marin is carving a set of new chairs, each one with a different mark on the back, one for each of the years since the plague, the new years, the true years. Warren walks the edge of the orchard every morning now. He plants nothing. He harvests nothing. He simply walks. When you ask him why, he smiles. To remember the shape of the land, he says, so we never lose it again. Your daughter finishes her book. She wraps it in cloth, places it inside a wooden box. Then she chooses a place in the grove, beneath the roots of a crooked birch. She digs the hole herself. Your son helps her press the earth back down, solemn and careful. No one says a word. Later, she will write another. She already has a new journal and a new title. What comes after? You do not ask what she'll write. You already know. It begins with the turning of a page and the flicker of light on water. The days are short now. By the time the morning mist clears, the sun is already halfway across the sky. It glows pale and low, never climbing high enough to chase away the cold. Shadows stretch long and thin, and every sound, footsteps on frost, a bucket set down, even laughter feels hushed, softened by the weight of winter's breath. The valley moves slower. The tasks are smaller now, more deliberate. No more planting, no more harvest, just tending, just keeping. The kind of work that speaks of care, not survival. The hearth becomes the center of every home, not just for heat, but for light, for memory, for gathering. You begin to know fire differently, its moods, its hunger, the way it flickers with stories and settles with silence, the way it draws people together, even those who have no words left to share. The village has changed again, no longer rebuilding, no longer recovering, but becoming. Ellen's forge still burns, but quieter. She teaches in the afternoons now, not just metalwork, but how to repair what's worth saving, how to let go of what is not. Isabeau keeps the small winter clinic within, tending to coughs, frost-nipped fingers, the slow aches of cold bones. She moves with assurance. You often catch her humming, and sometimes, when no one watches, she laughs. It has taken time, but the laugh is real now. Your wife spends her mornings weaving. She uses leftover wool, old cloth, scraps of color saved from spring. She weaves without pattern, letting her fingers guide her, creating shapes that mean nothing until they mean something. She hangs the pieces above your door, above the schoolhouse, above the fire. Your son reads more often now. Books, yes, but also clouds, wind, bird tracks in the snow. He says less than he used to, but every word he chooses feels precise, like a seed saved for the right soil. And your daughter, she begins another story. It is not about the past, not this time. It begins with a girl watching a flock of crows fly over a frozen lake. You ask her what it means. She shrugs. It doesn't mean yet, she says, but it will. One night, in the thick of the cold, Waring comes to your door. He is wrapped in 3 cloaks, a thin trail of snow clinging to his shoulders. He does not knock. You open before he reaches the step. There's something you should see, he says. You follow him through the sleeping village, past the shuttered windows and curling chimneys. Your breath clouds in front of you, and your boots creak through new snow. He leads you to the bridge, the one they built in summer, the one that crosses into the new grove. There, on the far bank, stands a single tree. You know this tree. It was small once, bent sideways, nearly lost to rotten shade, but now it stands tall, straight. It has grown in the cold, in the wind, through everything. Its bark is pale and smooth, its branches bare but strong, and in the moonlight you see something extraordinary. All across its limbs, tied with bits of thread and bark, hang dozens of tokens. Little stars, tiny scrolls, bundles of herbs, offerings, from children, from travelers, from someone who believed this tree would remember. Waring doesn't speak, he only looks at you, and you understand. It's not just the village that has healed, it's the land, the air, the rhythm. This tree, this place, it holds the weight of everything, and still it grows. You stand there a long while, until the cold finds your bones and whispers you home. The next morning, your daughter places something in your hand, a single page. Written in her careful, steady script, it reads, "We thought the world ended, but it didn't. It just changed its shape, and asked us if we would too." You say nothing, just fold it once and place it in your coat pocket. Later, when the snow falls again, and the village gathers for the midwinter quiet, you stand beside the fire. You do not speak. No one does. The quiet is part of the celebration now. And in that quiet, you know, not everything must be said. Some things are meant to be felt, held, passed on, not in shouts, but in stories. And this story is almost finished, but not yet. Winter reaches its peak, not with fury, but with stillness. The valley lies beneath a soft white hush. Snow covers every rooftop, every branch, every path, until the world feels wrapped in a kind of gentle forgetting. The river slows under a shell of ice. Smoke curls upward in lazy spirals, the only motion in a landscape that is chosen for a moment to rest. Inside the homes, life is quiet, blankets are thicker, footsteps are softer, the fire burns lower now, not for lack of wood, but out of respect, for warmth that must last, for silence that deserves to be heard. In your home, the days move like pages turning by candlelight. You spend your mornings mending, boots, bindings, tools. Your wife sits near the hearth, weaving a great blue shawl she says is meant for no one and everyone. Isabeau visits often, bringing wild herbs and stories she claims she dreamt. Ellen has begun carving something, a great circle of wood with symbols no one quite understands yet, but all agree must mean something true. And the children? They grow. Not just taller, not just wiser. They grow into the valley. They know every shortcut through the trees, every echo of birdsong, every bend of the stream beneath its glassy crust. They speak less of before now. The plague, the silence, the fear. They speak instead of what will come, of gardens that might stretch farther, of paths that might lead somewhere. One morning, your daughter brings you her newest work. It is bound in birch bark, stitched with blue twine. On the first page, she has drawn the valley, not as it was, not even as it is, but as it might be. There are more homes, more bridges, more trees. She has drawn strangers too, laughing with the villagers, planting, singing, living. It's a guess, she says softly, a hope. You run your fingers over the lines and whisper, it looks true to me. Then one night, the fire dies down early. No one speaks, but you feel it. Some ending drawing near. Not heavy, not sad, just full. The children sleep early, curled like cats under wool. Isabeau hums beside the hearth, her voice barely above breath. Your wife finishes her shawl, folds it, sets it beside the door without a word. Outside, the sky is clear. The stars shine hard and cold and endless. You step out into the snow and let the silence hold you. It is not the silence of death. It is the silence of understanding, of peace, of memory settling like snow. You walk to the tree at the edge of the grove, the one where the offerings hang. It stands taller now, even in winter. Its limbs strong, its shadow long. You press your palm to its trunk and close your eyes, not in prayer, but in gratitude. For every breath that followed fear, for every hand held, for every choice made gently. You leave nothing behind, no charm, no note, because you have already given everything, and now it is enough. When you return to the house, your wife is waiting. She doesn't speak. She only takes your hand, and together you lie beside the children, beneath the weight of years and blankets and dreams and sleep. In the spring, the snow will melt, the river will wake, the bees will return, and new footprints will appear on the path from the woods. Strangers, friends, children who have only known stories. They will ask what came before, and someone, your daughter, perhaps will open a book and begin. There was a time when the world grew quiet, and in that quiet we listened, and in that listening we changed, and when we changed we began again. And the story will not end, because stories never do. Not when they are remembered, not when they are lived.